Welcome to the Soul of Medicine. So welcome to the Soul of Medicine podcast, the show where we venture into the deepest mysteries of the human experience, exploring the frontiers of consciousness, existence, and personal growth. I'm your host, Dr. Kay Corpus, along with Rob Kress. Today, we're embarking on a captivating journey through the labyrinth of time and the soul. Our guest today is Jessica Ramirez, the founder of Explore Your Lives, a practice dedicated to guiding individuals in discovering the hidden memories and profound insights that reside within their own past existences through the powerful tool of past life regression. Through her work at Explore Your Lives, Jessica has helped countless people release long-held blocks, understand deep-seated patterns, and tap into the timeless wisdom that our past lives can offer us. Her approach elegantly weaves together psychology, spirituality, and a deep respect for the mysteries of the human journey. In this episode, Jessica will share her own path to becoming a past life regressionist, demystify the process for those who are curious, and offer powerful examples of the transformative potential that lies within our past life memories. We'll delve into the ways that exploring our past can liberate us in the present and how it might expand our understanding of what it means to be human. Whether you're a seasoned explorer of the metaphysical or a curious skeptic, this conversation is sure to offer new perspectives and perhaps even stir something deep within our own soul's memory. So let's dive in with an open heart and open mind and see where this journey through the layers of time takes us. Hey, Jessica, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Welcome.
Thanks, Rob.
Yes, and it's good to connect with you. I know we connected a while ago. We have some similar connection, all three of us actually, through Pennsylvania. I believe I was looking for a past life regression person. I've been fascinated with your work and your story. So glad to have you on here.
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for being open to share this kind of work with everyone.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in past life regression.
I don't know if it's that I became interested in past life regression or it found me more. I will say in 1995 and 1996, I left college to travel around the world. I was 20 and 21 that year, and I left college to travel around the world with the musical touring group Up With People. Do you know what that is? So my husband likes to call it Kumbaya Palooza, but it was a musical touring group. And I had a couple books in my backpack, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying and Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. And Dr. Weiss is a psychotherapist who wrote this book. So that was 95. I think he wrote it in 88. And it was about how his patients started to recall past life memories to heal their traumas. So I was curious about it, and I'd be in the back of the bus reading it, and my friends would be sitting next to me, and I would say, oh, look at this. And they'd say, well, why do you think I was born to a mother who took her own life? And I'd say, well, instead of asking that question, let's ask, what lesson does your soul want you to learn? And so I started to kind of delve into this work even when I was 20 and 21. Move ahead a little bit, and I got hired by Rodale Press and was a publicist there. And I was given all the self-help books there. So Prayer, Faith, and Healing, and those kind of books. It was at the time of the South Beach diet. And I was like, I got Prayer, Faith, and Healing. And now I know why, because it was a full circle moment when I returned to this work. So eventually I went on to teach communications at a local university and then do more publicity work freelance for self-help authors throughout many years while I had young children. And I returned to this work at a point when I had just gotten pregnant. I was in the second trimester of a pregnancy, and I had contracted Fifth disease, parvovirus, and I lost that baby through parvovirus. So it was a really deep, dark time for me. It was a really challenging time. I started to go back to, the resources that I had discovered 13 years before or 12 years before when I had read Brian Weiss's work. So I started to look around to utilize past life regression to heal from the pain of that loss and understand the soul's journey and how I was connected to the baby that had passed away. So I started to do past life regression, and I would just like go on YouTube and listen to a video. And then, I'd see myself as a gladiator. I'd take a couple notes and I'd be like, today's the day I'm going to cure this. Today's the day I'm going to better understand this. And it was all just like kind of interesting stories that would come up, but nothing that really I could make connections or heal at first. This is an important piece of my puzzle. Right after that loss, I was in the grocery store and in the cereal aisle pushing my 5-year-old son, Gabriel, in the cart. And this kind of witchy woman came up to me and she said to me, I hope this doesn't upset you, but did you just lose a son? And I was like, yes. She said, they are going to send him back. And I was actually really pretty angry that this woman approached me in the grocery store when I was looking for granola, and I like just burst into tears. I couldn't finish my shopping. I just went home and cried the rest of the day. So a couple of weeks later, I went to the chiropractor, and the chiropractor was away on vacation and somebody was covering his practice. And she started to work on me as somebody that never worked on me before. And she said to me, did you just lose a son? And I'm like, okay, universe, like I'm listening this time. She said, they didn't have the medical technology to fix him, but they're sending him back. And I was like, oh my gosh, like now this is twice. I have to listen to this message. So I thought to myself, like, as I did my past life regression work, like, would he show up? If he's been in my life before, would he show up again? So time went on and I ended up having another son, and he's 15 years old now. But I did think during that pregnancy, is he the same soul? But I never wanted him to feel like a Band-Aid in case he wasn't, like he, was there to replace someone. So I never mentioned it to him. Well, when he was 2.5, he was sitting at the kitchen table eating a snack, and I was cutting vegetables at the island, and he turned and he looked back to me and he said, Mommy, once I was a baby in your belly. I died and I went to heaven. I sat in blue chairs and I waited. And then I yelled down to Julia, his older sister, Julia, I'm coming back. Then I came back into your belly. I wanted to eat watermelon. You ate watermelon, and I was so happy. And he was born at the end of July, a lot of watermelon eating time. So he was really like my permission to kind of delve deeper and to believe that this was real and this was going to give me the answers. So where I say that I really didn't choose this work, it chose me. I really believe it chose me. And so that's it. So I utilized the work. I healed TMJ through this work on myself. After I saw myself in a lifetime with Matthew before, I was able to release the weight of that 18 pounds that I still carried from that previous pregnancy. I had gained 18 pounds in that pregnancy. And after I had Matthew, I still held on to that weight. And the midwife said to me, you still look pregnant. When are you going to lose that? And I said, that was the house for my baby. I'm never going to lose that. But after I did a regression, I was able to lose that in 1 month. So having that experience, healing my TMJ by seeing myself as a Native American man with an arrow in my neck, was enough to have me be curious enough to say yes to this adventure and yes to this training and walk away from my work as a publicist, because I knew if I could do this, then other people needed this help too. That was a really long explanation, but really the universe set me up for success with my loss, and, it made my mess my message. So I'm grateful for that.
Jessica, one thing that I love about you is that this is kind of what people think is sort of woo-woo, but you have this really grounded quality about you that I love, and just it makes it, I feel, accessible to people. I think sometimes becomes this sort of disconnect of people floating in the spiritual and the density of this world and trying to translate that. And so, I mean, how is that possible for you that you've reflected on?
Yeah. So I actually was sitting next to a woman at the sandbox who was an acupuncturist. And she said, "Oh, tell me what you do." And I said, "Well, I'm a past life regression therapist." And she turned to me and said, "And you're not weird?" you know, I said, "I think that's a compliment. Thank you." I don't know. I am like that, but I think that, if I look at my lifetime, I've had enough trauma that I can sit with people in their trauma without judgment. I have people that come to me for so many different reasons they're ashamed of because a sibling was lost, their lives in their care or injured, or, somebody's had an affair or they're considering I can sit with them through that and we can look at that because their soul wants them to learn a lesson, and I can hold that space with them till they figure out what's next and not judge it and love them and meet them where they're at, love them through it. And there's a reason they're experiencing these things. And it's time for us to explore that and examine that so they can align with where they're going and where they need to be. So I think that I am a little bit woo-woo, but I'm not like, playing the keyboard and singing songs and wearing flowy clothes. Like I can sit with them and hold their hand and see their value. Like I can hold the mirror up to them and show them, what they're capable of. And that I'm very proud of. And that's why I love this work. And one of the greatest parts is they see their oneness, and that just like improves the whole world, right? Like when they see themselves as a gay man in a past life or as in another culture or another race or experiencing religion in a different way, they can now relate to it, and they didn't have that perspective before, and realize that we are really all one.
Well, I will just tell you, and I tell my patients this, when I think it was the last time I talked to you, it was a little bit ago. I called you for a session. I was like, "Hey, Jessica, I just got divorced." You're like, "Good for you." I'm like, "Okay, awesome. Let's go." And usually when you tell people, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" And like putting you sort of in that victim mode or whatever. And the moment, just that, "Good for you. Like, let's go." You know what I mean? It was just like, okay, snap out of it. Let's go. So
Right.
I knew you were looking at something deeper, like my soul or whatever that needed to be released so that we can,
Right.
go more forward in the work.
Well,
so,
and like people come up and they're like, I'm something that's like something to be ashamed of. It's a failure. And I'm like, "Oh, no. Like your soul had a lesson they want you to learn. Like it's time to evolve. It's time to get enlightened. It's time to understand your soul's perspective so you can move forward and do better and be better. And, life gets exciting now because if you're not changing it, you're choosing it. So you chose something different. So now it's the time to shift that."
Lovely. So for listeners who may not be familiar, can you explain what past life regression is and how it works and how you practice? Yeah.
So I also use like very much Brian Weiss's technique because it's a very loving technique, and it's not much different from like yoga nidra. It's like a light form of hypnosis, a deep form of meditation, enabled to access the subconscious to help people do the things like we were talking about, understand their soul's journey, get their soul's perspective, that bird's eye view. When you come out of the body and you look from above, what do you observe? What can you see? How is this serving your soul? It helps them better understand themselves, their relationships with themselves, others, their family, their soulmates, their twin flames. It helps them examine their patterns, their beliefs, their samskaras, all of those, psychological imprints that we gather, those stories we're telling ourselves. It can help you access your higher self, your spirit guides, your loved ones on the other side. It helps you align and understand your life's purpose. I get a lot of people who feel stuck. So this will help them examine where they are and why they're there so they can move forward. So this is just an access to that subconscious. Where are you now? What needs to be examined? What needs to be worked on? and where are you going? It also like helps people, like they'll have like a lot of trauma in their lives and they're like, I must have done something horrible in a past life to deserve this. But really what it is it's time to address that so you don't have to carry it any longer and do differently. It also heals physical and emotional pain, and it can help you release that trauma, address that guilt, that shame, all of those things, the fears, the phobias. There's so many things it can help you address. So that's what past life regression can, give you access to. It's incredible when you start to do this kind of self-work.
Well, what I think, as a physician, right, and when we're doing functional medicine, so we talk about root causes, and from a physical perspective, it's often the adrenals or the nervous system driving, all the inflammation in the immune system. And then there's this other piece of like, well, what is that tiger chasing you? What is that emotional, psychological, and spiritual thing? And I almost feel like the root does come from these past life. It really does have to be figured into the equation as we're looking at chronic illness and refractory kinds of things that are showing up, or when you've tried everything. Do you know what I mean? And it's hard sometimes to bring this work in the back of my mind. I'm thinking about it, but it's not coming out of my mouth of how to bring this up unless the patient's open to this. So I have a couple of questions is like, well, maybe this podcast will help open this if, I have tried everything and we've exhausted everything as functional doctors and holistic doctors. And this might be a layer to go into. And like, what would you say to that? And I'm asking this with a lot of my guests now, that if you could do the medical system over again, scratch it, where would you see that this could be helpful? Because we're looking at the person, the being, the soul of it all, right? And we talk about holistic medicine, and we can't not talk about this aspect. I think a lot of belief systems get in there, but I think being curious and open to that. How would you approach?
Yeah. So, whether we're looking at traditional Chinese medicine or we're looking at, I go to a DO and he'll have somebody back in the office. He'll call me back there and say, listen to what he's saying. What can you gather from this? I can't believe my doctor still pulls me back with other patients and says, hey, she's got some insights, some clues to this. Let's ask her. She's out in the waiting room. So I love when doctors are thinking that way. And I want to invite everybody to really listen to the words that they say around, their pain. Pain is always information about how you're living your life, what you need to address, and what needs to change. Okay. So if they say, I have a pain in the back, I have a pain in the neck, he's a real pain in the ass, right? Like, listen to that information. Maybe you have sciatica because you're in a marriage you shouldn't be in. Maybe you have pain in your lower back because you're worried about that family future and finances. Maybe you have a pain in the neck because you have a mother or a spouse or a child that's a pain in the neck. Or if you're saying like things like, these kids kill me, right? Like, doing all this work for these kids, this kills me, right? Like, really listen to that. You don't want to put those things into your mind because they're creating illness and disease for you. So if we can really listen to our language, I think that's like one of the biggest steps. And I know you're doing this already. And when you're talking to your patients, that you're really listening to this, but I want like people to take on that responsibility for themselves and really listen to what that is. And then, there's so many things we have to access. Regression, meditation, our dreams have information. How we react to people is information. Whether we're fearful when we're approached with a health crisis. And I will tell you, I have noticed a ton in my practice that people create health crises to get their needs met over and over and over again. They'll say, I have chronic illness, I have chronic disease, but maybe their child's estranged and they're waiting to see if the child will come back. Or maybe their spouse is, ignoring them. They will create this or test them with illness and disease. I see it over and over again. Sometimes it's a past life carryover where they were abandoned maybe in a past life. I've seen like situations where a village was pillaged or raided, or a tribe was, and they're the lone survivors. So they'll test people in their relationships, in their current life relationships, with illness to see if they're going to stay through anything. So we need to be kind of examining those things to better understand where it's coming from. And I've seen it shift like that. Just one past life regression, one lifetime, they go back and that illness is healed. And they have no sign of disease after that. It's mind blowing to me still today. One of my favorite, well, two actually I can think of in the last couple of years of my favorite cases were two young women. Well, they were considered old, but two young women to me with fertility challenges. And they were getting, to be of an age where they weren't going to have any more eggs left, or their in vitro wasn't working. And they both came and they went to past lifetimes where either they died in childbirth, their child died in childbirth, both them and the child died in childbirth. And they had this fear around being pregnant or miscarrying or losing a child. And once we saw those lifetimes and they released it, they were pregnant within months. And it's incredible. And one of them, during her session, we went to those lifetimes where she came to me she said, is there any way I can get in on a Tuesday? I'm having where they like this procedure where they scrape my uterus on Friday because I've built up tissue in my uterus. And I said, absolutely. We got her in. I asked who was doing the surgical procedure. She told me. I said, oh, tell her you were here on Tuesday because she's my client and her daughter's my client. Just tell her you were here. And she said, okay. They got in there, they opened her up, and there was no scarred tissue after we did the regression that Tuesday before. So that was like pretty mind blowing. I can't even explain it, but I do know that like during the session, she had gone to the past lifetimes, had other healing experiences from other dimensions. Like, I don't know if angels came forward or something came forward to help her heal. I let her go through that process and asked her to tell me when she was finished. And then she said, I feel so much better. And then they went to do that procedure on Friday, no scar tissue. And she said to the doctor, you're not going to believe this. I did the regression. She's like, I absolutely believe it. My daughter's gone to do this work with Jessica for years, and I've also done this work. So it's pretty incredible when you think about that. And now I get pictures of these babies growing up, and it's stellar. It feels, they had to just clear that out of that subconscious. So where that negative neural pathway was happening, it shifts to the positive, and then the change can be created. It opens the pathway because now they know it was in that lifetime. It doesn't have to exist here. And then it can change for the better.
Do you find that when it does show up, like, or people are told, or they have a regression and they're like, somebody told me that, something happened in my past life with my current husband, who they sort of had the same relationship, and they're so afraid that the same thing will happen again. And, why is this life or the lives, particularly when you bring up, I think we do 3 regressions. Do you usually do 3 regressions or so?
Yeah, it depends on what we can fit in. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're coming up for a reason, right? To be healed, because we have many, many lives. And what is the lesson now that we're trying to get from it? And it seemed like when I did my sessions with you, there was sort of this theme, this overriding theme that would show up of the regression, the lives that would show up for me. And, and when we have stuckness around that energetic stuckness, that can turn into disease. And it's so powerful, like you're saying, is that if people could understand how quickly, I remember Carolyn Mace would say the time it takes you to heal is the exact same time it takes you to get to your truth. So there's that thing of time is not like linear time, anything can happen. Right. And so this younger generation is definitely more open to this. They just thought it was awesome. They kept wanting to do it and explore. So hopefully this will become a little more accessible and mainstream for people, because I feel like if we can get this understanding of the totality, the whole soul of a soul's journey, because I think sometimes in medicine it's just like the caboose of it, the result of everything. And I mean, this is why I started the podcast, to start talking more about, how this stuff is actually organized, and the fear that many of us run around with. We don't really need to. Just how you coach people, it's like, you're going to be fine. Do you see that this is all in the tapestry of what's supposed to happen?
Right. And I think like we want to push away like those things that are the human experience, but they're really valuable. And again, like I said before, like if you're not changing it, you're choosing it. Like a lot of times people just think it's safe to just stay there. It's just safer or less scary to just feel that pain or just sit in that and stay in that. But really it's that we want to understand it so the shift can happen, so we can align with something better, something greater than ourselves. That's what the soul wants us to learn. So we don't have to do it again and again and again.
Exactly. So how do you respond to skeptics who view past life regression as a product of your imagination, a form of therapy, rather than actual recall of previous experiences? And also, if we can go there, this maybe against their belief system or religion, that comes up quite a bit. How do you answer those questions for people?
And this happens like in every single workshop I do, or you could just tell when somebody walks in, they'll immediately say like, I don't believe any of this, or I'm a person of science and this isn't scientific, or, they'll present that way. I say to them, what are your challenges? Let's look at what your challenges are. Let's sit down with what's not working for you and what you need to change. And I also say, like, let's not focus on whether it's real or not, just for today. Let's not worry about whether reincarnation exists or not. Let's figure out how it's relevant, what you need to address and what needs to change. And then if you see the shifts, then you can decide if this is real or not. When you feel the emotion, you can decide if it's real or not. And then that seems to be enough. Like I'll give people who will be coming for their third, their fourth, their fifth session, they'll be like, remember when I challenged you? And I was like, the naysayer in the workshop, and remember, and now like, look, I didn't think I could be with anybody. And now I'm getting married in another country, like now they see those changes. It's come to fruition and they're excited about what it has brought to them. And they'll say, I don't even know if I still believe in it, but I know that this worked for me. So that's really what I want. I want to present a modality that is going to help whoever meet them again, wherever they're at. I'm not here to put my beliefs on anyone. I just want to hold the space for you to examine what it is. What if it's not real? What if it's like a dream, but what if it released pain? What if it cured something, a phobia that you had? Then if that works, just like, going to a psychotherapy appointment, then that's great. So that's the space I hold. And I get a lot of people who will say, I don't know if I should be here. I'm Catholic. And I mean, over and over and over again. And I say, well, come on in. I was a priest in a past life, so we'll be friends right away. I was a priest in a past life. But really, like what they don't know is the most reincarnation texts in the world are in the Vatican Library. So, I believe like one of the earlier Pope Benedicts took reincarnation out of the Bible. So if we look at that, then, you believe what exists today and what your parents told you because it was fear-based. But let's just be open, have an open heart and an open mind to just explore. And whatever that is, let's do it, because if it gives you the opportunity to heal something, it gives you the opportunity to be free, then let's do that. that's what we're here for. So I try and just make them comfortable and know that it's a loving process, and that, if they really want change, that we can do this work, whether if they believe it's true or not, it's still valuable.
What are some common themes that you've observed in your clients' past life regressions? Are there commonalities and things that you see?
Sure. Absolutely. That abandonment theme comes up all the time. People will come to me and they'll say, I don't know what's wrong with me. I was born to loving parents. They were supportive. I had every single thing that I could ever need in my life, but I'm 38 years old and I'm not with the person. I haven't found my soulmate yet, or I haven't found my person yet because I push people away. So abandonment's like a big theme. And again, we'll go back to a lifetime where they were the only one, like the people they love left them because some circumstance happened. There was a natural disaster or something. And once they finally let that go, they can align with it. So abandonment is a big theme. Again, like people I love leave me is a theme. People who take on too much. If I don't do it, nobody will. People who feel like, am I married to my soulmate? Or is this person I'm in a relationship with, are they my soulmate? Is the pool boy my soulmate? I'll get that one once in a while. They'll cross paths with somebody and they'll just knock them over and they'll be like, wait a minute, we connect. I'm married to this person over here. Why do I feel more connected to this person? So we explore that. Maybe they had a past life together. Maybe it's just to realize that they had a past life together and have that validation. Maybe it's to awaken something in them, so they ask for it in their current relationship. So we explore those kind of things. A lot of people come because they feel like they want to discover their purpose. They feel like, they don't know what they should do with their lives. And we'll go back to a lifetime where, they were a nurse on a field, on a battlefield, during the Civil War. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, they're a nurse, or they're helping people in some way because they were able to see themselves living purposefully and having good relationships and really wanting to call that forth. And it's the motivation to shift that. When I left my job as a publicist and stepped into this full time, that's when I saw myself as the priest during a time of famine. And I saw the words coming out of my mouth and going into people's hearts. And I could see them giving them hope in a time when they had no resources and no hope. And I kept hearing heal their hearts. Oftentimes we think our purpose is you need to be a nurse, you need to be a teacher, you need to be a doctor, but sometimes it's just heal their hearts. So we are playful with that and curious about that, so we can align with that and make that our mantra to bring our work to others. So those are the kind of things, should I stay or should I go is a big one in relationships, or, should I estrange from my family? Should I not? This level of abuse acceptable or not? It's murky sometimes, that knowing, what's acceptable and what's not based on your family's norms or what beliefs you have. So we'll go back and explore those things so they can make decisions about their current lives.
So when you start exploring, is it that this life we have an opportunity to change those patterns of the past, right? How we've probably operated in the same sort of way in different lives. So so the way it sort of showed up, well, not sort of, the way it showed up for me. So I have had multiple sessions or lives where I was always this healer in a male body. So I was either like a shaman or, some medicine man or something like that. And the main issue was that I took on the responsibility of massive amounts of people and they died. So I had one where I was a shaman, second in line to the chief, and the Europeans came in and wanted to give this vaccine, and the tribe was already ill. I exhausted all of my indigenous, stuff. And I was like, well, they're dying. Okay. Because I felt responsible, and they ended up all dying like masses, like millions. And so I took that on as it was my responsibility. So how it translates to this life. And I remember my dad saying to me, "Oh, you're a doctor now. Now you're a slave to society. Now like there is this indebtedness that I have carried lifetime after lifetime. And the way it translates to this life is like no boundaries. It's like you need something. Here I am. Here's my cell phone. I'll be open all these hours. I'll be fully available to you," which then becomes very exhausting. And I didn't make the connection of those lives where I was responsible and having to be present and always available, doctoring people to survive. Right. And so knowing that's a common theme and how it makes me feel exhausted, how then could I shift that to still be the healer, but still have generative energy? I think my sole purpose really is to teach and healing. Like, what if I wasn't doctoring? These timelines are like going insane right now. I love it. So after I have a past life regression and I connect, I'm like looking online of like, do I know this person? Who was I, kind of thing, which like it turned out to be the freaking smallpox epidemic that killed freaking millions of people. Then I was like, yeah, that was a loss to begin with. There's no way in hell that I could have, my little shaman self could have like helped. It was already bigger than me. Right. So it put it in perspective. I'm like, okay. So if I let that go, the need to what if I didn't have to doctor somebody? How could I still be a healer? So what am I really doing if I'm not doctoring them and saving them from death and destruction? Right. Is that even my job? Like literally I had this moment, like, what is my job? What is my true purpose? And it's like, oh, what if it is just this space holding, like you said, or, for even like this space for people to discover really their own authenticity. It's not my manipulation of their bodies or anything like that. It's just, hey, here's some cool information. This is what I know, take it or leave it, and it just sort of settled my nervous system a whole heck of a lot, because I think there's a lot of expectation put on clinicians to keep somebody alive and healthy when there's so much. Is that even our real responsibility? Then I'm like, what's the point of being a doctor? Like all these years of like training, right? So anyway, that's how past life regression just recently has really helped me. Not sure if you had any feedback.
Yeah. And, like just a couple of things came to mind where like, maybe part of your soul lesson is to set boundaries, right? Like, so giving a voice to, here's when I'm accessible. I want to help you. Here's when I'm accessible, and sticking to that, and having having a plan for it. The same way, you send the guidelines for the podcast, the guidelines for your practice members, right? And then it doesn't mean you don't help them. You're still providing with resources and you have a plan. So that there was a lot of things out of your control with that. This kind of thing can be in your control. And also like, not being taken advantage of when you have a patient that comes in and wants to spend 4 hours with you, right? Like having a structure, because that's not serving anybody either. So also for me, I just know that when I first started doing this work, I wanted to help everyone, and I wanted to scream about past life regression from the rooftops and say, come do this, like it'll change your life. And I do believe that, but also knowing that I'm just a guide for them. It's when they are supposed to meet the healing, right? Like I'm not the healer. I have a healing modality. And when they show up, I hold the space and I trust that whatever comes forward is exactly perfect. So it's you accessing that trust and that knowing that this is exactly as it's meant to be. And instilling that in them to have that trust, because I can tell you so many people walk through the door and they don't have that trust with this work. And I say, just please listen. If you can be present to this, this is what's available to you. And their lives shift over and over again. And I'm sure you see that with your patients all the time. If they can be present and they follow through and there's continuity and they're honest about what they're dealing with, They're honest about their emotions around it. They're honest about what's happening in their lives. When you're looking at that bigger picture, they're honest about whatever they're eating or what supplements they're taking or what medications. Then you can really have a good picture and provide the best information. So it's meeting you in that honesty and everybody having boundaries. And there's such a beauty in that, that's part of your lesson, right? Is setting that up so everyone can succeed.
Well, just, I think you're saying something super important too, is that, and I did ask you that question, like if you were to teach med students or doctors, in this system, is the definition of what a healer is, a doctor really is, right? And agree. The word doctor is actually comes from "dako," which is teacher. You're a teacher, right? And so, I mean, these expectations that are sort of put on people and patients getting disappointed if the doc can't meet it or the provider can't meet it. I think what you're saying here is like, there is this deep root definition, of what we're really doing here. Call us what you want, but like you said, am I a guide? Am I a teacher? It's a little bit more loose than, what is the doctor or the clinician exactly? And I think that would just let some of that stress and pressure off, in medicine. I mean, the whole system could potentially it was built on something else, built on fear, all of that.
I absolutely agree. I just had an experience. I had my gallbladder out in February. Surprisingly, I didn't have any other symptoms. Well, not surprisingly, knowing what I know, gallbladder is bitterness, and I have some bitterness about my childhood. And it's also, if you know anything about human design, like whatever my human design profile is, bitterness is like my shadow side. So if I can love people so deeply, why couldn't you love me this deeply, kind of, bitterness stuff. So I end up in the ER because I'm doing abdominal work and I could see like a tennis ball pop out of my abdomen. I thought I have a hernia. And so I end up in the ER and I'm like, can you just tell me my mom's having knee surgery and I have to go help lift her. Is this a hernia? And they're like, no. And they do the ultrasound. You need your gallbladder out. I get this incredible surgeon who is this 35-year-old guy. He is off the charts lovely, where he's showing me pictures of his dog. I'm saying, hey, gallbladder's bitterness. He's like, no kidding. Tell me more. He's saying, why aren't you traveling to India? Your work needs to go. Like, we're like collaborators. I felt like I had a partner in my care. We were excited to be together. When my surgery was over, he met with my husband and my daughter. They were lovely. And then he called me a couple of weeks later and said, I just wanted to check in with you. I know you're going to Europe. I want to know how you're feeling and what you're working on, like in your life. Like, he was just an incredible human that extended himself beyond so I could have a good experience. And this guy is 35 years old. And I said some stuff to him and he's like, you sound just like my mother. Like, they challenge me and say, you might have a medical degree, but this is the truth about that. And I said, well, I just it's my truth. So we share in that together. And he's like, I completely agree. He probably got in trouble because our appointments went over, but it felt like you had somebody to hold your hand and walk to the ends of the earth with you in a time that, was challenging. And that's what we need more in medical care. People used to be creative and now it's like, oh, let's go and look up what the Band-Aid is for this instead of exploring what's really going on. And I work with a lot of parents too, who have children with a lot of ADHD and things like that. And their doctors just don't even understand what's going on. They just want to prescribe meds for them and they can't. And really, they're not looking, they don't have a doctor to partner with them and say, hang on, this is a magnesium deficiency. Is anybody looking at what heavy metals are in your house? In your water? What are we not looking at that is whole health and can make a great impact on your brain and, changes like that. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of things like that, because they're just, everybody was taught to believe everything the doctor said was, the word. And now we've got to look at all these different things. And I know that your work definitely does that too. And we have to look at the emotional aspect. Why was I given this child? Because maybe there's something you need to work on that needs to change, that needs to shift so the soul can learn the lesson. So I think that you are already doing that and asking those types of questions in your practice. Do you see that coming up for you a lot, like where you're able to work through those little things that are like the thing that shifts the dynamic around the illness, the disease,
Well, I think it's the first thing is just like relatability. You know what I mean? It's like, we're not on a pedestal. Like, I just feel like I have felt every single emotion. I know what it feels like for my body to be out of control. That's what you were talking about, having enough trauma go on in your own life to be grounded, to be able to hold the space for other people. It's not like we're not immune to, we act like we're immune to every kind of illness, stress, and whatever. And that disconnect is the problem, I think, and I have a lot of patients who are like, they don't listen. It's just a Band-Aid. And I'm telling them, and you know what I mean? And those are some just foundational, fundamental ways of being that are contributing to the healing relationship, right? Because when you feel dismissed, that shuts you down. Your cortisol is going everywhere, your inflammation, it's not necessarily the act of a cholecystectomy. It's that your trust, your nervous system is settled, your heart is trusting, and now like healing can happen very quickly, right? We discount these things that we can't measure by a CT or an MRI or a blood test, and it's just, we're missing something massive here, which is so powerful. So I'm just a proponent of, looking at all of these pieces and, practicing in a different way. And it's hard to hold space like that when, the medical system is as such and so large and huge and funded and, all that stuff. But, that's, like you said, it's just like part of the work. So part of my work anyway. So.
And thankfully, because there's not enough people thinking that way and doing that, or courageous enough. People do want to do it, but they're just not, it's too hard. It's just too hard. It's going against the system. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where I feel like, knowing past life, like I've been here before. I've been, high up in the church and like tongue cut out and all that stuff. We don't have to put this in the recording, by the way. Liberate. Little whip. But knowing that, it's like, oh, I'm back again. Like I've died a million times at that kind of hand, and like, it's just choosing like, how do I do it differently this time? So how can people find you, learn more about your work, and potentially work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I offer sessions in person in Pennsylvania, just outside of Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I also travel in this area about 3 hours in every direction. So if they're looking for a workshop, I go to different wellness centers. But they can reach me by going on Facebook or Instagram, Explore Your Lives, or exploreyourlives at gmail.com is my email address. So if they're just curious or they have more questions, they can always reach out to exploreyourlives at gmail.com.
Are you doing online sessions?
I am. Yeah. So I do, all different online sessions through Zoom, through WhatsApp, through Facebook Messenger. It's like what's working that day technologically that we can hop on to. And the online sessions, I work with people all over the world, and they're just as powerful to be via Zoom. I know you've experienced it yourself, to be via Zoom or WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, just as powerful and just as healing and as life-changing. They're really a game changer. So if there's something that's keeping you stuck, you just are curious and want to explore, you have something that you've been to every doctor, every psychologist, and you just can't get to the source of that, we'll help you. We'll stick with you until I can get to the source of that with you. So you're not alone in that experience. So it can shift and change for the better.
So what's the most important thing you hope listeners take away, Jessica, from our conversation on past life regression?
That they have tools, they have resources. When you think you've exhausted everything, you actually do have resources. Maybe it's just looking at it from a different perspective, opening that heart, opening that mind, and getting ready to move forward. And I hope they know that, all of these modalities are tools, but past life regression is like a power tool. It just goes right in there. It focuses on what needs to shift. We put the spotlight on it. So you can release that and be free.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's so great to connect.
Thanks so much for having me, Kay.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Soul of Medicine podcast, where science meets soul for whole health healing. Are you ready to reclaim your energy, vitality, and soul purpose? Then feel free to head to our website at kcorpusmd.com and schedule an appointment for your root cause review.